pretty well, and then they struggled through a large chunk of the game after that.
Yeah, you saw us kind of call it a little bit more aggressive. The other thing, we really focused on our fundamentals, our techniques, and our details. When we're playing with fundamentals and technique, we're an elite defense. And when we aren't, that's where at times, teams can move the ball, right? So it wasn't like, hey, we got to throw out the game plan. It was, all right, we got to heat them up a little bit more. We got to do some things a little bit different in man coverage and then let them play fast.
When you look at how much your defense was around the ball with Nestor, Carmo, Gooseby, how much were you up there in the coach's box being like, we only got one takeaway after all that?
Well, we talked about, going into that game obsessing about the football, right? And I think after watch that game, you can say we obsessed about the football. Now we got to go catch the ones that they throw us. There's a lot of opportunities there that we could have had. I mean, there's a fumble that goes out of bounds. There's a couple interceptions that we could have came down with. We just got to keep, like I said, master our, techniques and our fundamentals to make sure we're, bringing those things back to us.
Where have you noticed the most growth from Maverick just coaching him over time since he's been here?
Yeah, I think the more Maverick gets, this is his, whatever year in the system, so, in terms of his intelligence, you can see that of the smarter you are, the faster you play, right? And I think that's the step that you're seeing him take is he sees the whole picture now, right? He understands what the coverage is doing. He understands what the D linemen in front of him are doing, and now he can just go out and let it rip. From a play calling standpoint, he asked me, what am I thinking in tempo situations? What am I? And you saw the sack that he gets in tempo, right? He's playing faster than everybody else on the football field, right? So I think that's just the next step that he needs to continue to go is just continuing to anticipate and then play like Maverick plays.
What's the emphasis with missed tackling?
Yeah, that's the thing that showed up, obviously this game. You look at the first game and, we have, zero missed tackles, and then you see this one and we have 17 missed tackles. At the end of the day, again, fundamentals, techniques, right? It goes back to that stuff. But that also being said, like, it's not just about the tackle itself. It's about putting yourself in position to make the tackle, right? And when you look at all of our missed tackles, why at times are we out of position, right? Whether that's an alignment thing, whether that's a communication thing, right? We gotta figure that out, and we gotta emphasize that. But the other thing is we gotta emphasize the tackling more. So we're doing tackling before practice. We're doing tackling now after practice. We're doing tackling in our individual. They are focused on tackling this week. Every time they're in the hallway, it's tackle, 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 tackle. Just like last week, it was about the ball. Now we're emphasizing the tackle. We just got to continue to get what you emphasize.
What impresses you most about Ohio State's offense?
A lot. I'll start with the wide receivers are very talented. Number 4 is outstanding football player. 17 is tremendous as well. Number 1 in the slot. They have 3 legitimate dangerous guys. In terms of the receiving game, tight end 86 can really go up and catch the football. Same with 15. O line plays nasty. In terms of the run game, moving people around, we got to be fundamentally and technique sound. Quarterback runs the show, and he can extend plays with his legs, which makes it a little bit dangerous as well. Throw on the run. He can scramble. He had some key decisions in that Washington game, I thought, which really helped their offense, make higher, percentage in terms of the field goal, getting, a couple extra yards on third and longs, things like that, using his legs, keeping the plays extended. Running backs, fantastic players, 12, big body that, is a hard runner that, it takes multiple guys to get him down. We got to really use the tackling system. And then 25, Bo Jackson, fantastic player that can, take one to the house from 75. So we got our hands full in terms of our challenge, and our guys are looking forward to that challenge.
You saw Mike Gerald get as much run in these last 2 weeks as he's gotten his entire career. What gives you so much confidence in him right now?
Yeah, I think Mike's just playing more confident. Again, when you get in there as a young guy, you'll see in our system those guys continue to get better and better and better each week. And that's what we're excited about Mike, because he's getting confident, right? And he's playing like that. And then you make a play, and then that confidence continues to rise. Hey, sometimes you won't make a play. That's where we need you to respond and next play mentality. And I think our guys do a great job in the back end of, holding us up to that standard every single time. And I'm really excited to see Mike continue to take the next step. Yeah, again, it's the being in the system for so long, understanding, in terms of the call and what he has to do within the call. But I think too, like the way Devin works, now compared to when he was younger, is tremendous and is a great example for the young guys that are watching Devin now. They see old Devin, right? The older version of Devin, right? The old man Devin, right? But they see him continue to work on those things after practice, pre-practice, and then his intentionality that he's bringing has been really special, and I'm excited for him.
How would you assess the days from Coy and Carey on Saturday?
Yeah, Kerry Brown stepped up in critical situations. He was playing a lot of different positions too. I think in that, interception, he's at that nickel spot and disguising a coverage, and he's able to do that. At the end of the game, you see the slot fade that he plays just in a crucial situation. There's the diving PBU that he has that really no one's talking about, right, because of that, longer drive there. But every time Kerry was challenged in that game, he stepped up to that challenge, and I'm just so proud of him at the continuing to see that growth from him. Coy, tremendous response from the week before. We challenged him that way. 11 tackles or whatever he had, and then the huge sack. In that tempo situation. But he's a guy that we knew he was going to respond, right? So both those guys are playing at a really high level. We got to keep that going in the safety room.
Your ability to roll coverage is notable. How do you develop a defense that gets confident in precision, zone drops, and just all the communication that goes with it?
Yeah, you got to practice it for a long period of time, right? So a lot of the stuff that we ran in that Rutgers game were things that we were doing in spring ball, things that we were doing in our walkthroughs in training camp that we hadn't shown yet, because we knew at some point we needed it, right? So the confidence that those guys have to, we kind of train everybody to do certain things, right? So, for instance, the safeties are trained to short drop as well as deep half. Same thing with the corners. Like everybody understands how to be a short dropper, how to be a middle runner, how to be a deep half player. And when you're really mastering those techniques and you're teaching those techniques, now you're able to just plug the scheme from there and let the guys play. And I think that, they love doing that stuff. They love, messing with the picture pre-snap and post-snap. And, that's when you're able to make plays on the football.
Anthony's got 16 and a half tackles for loss in his last 11 games. What makes him, he's not surprising anyone at this point, what makes him so difficult even when opposing offensive coordinators are trying to take him out of the game plan?
Yeah, he's a game wrecker. He's a game wrecker at the end of the day, and we can line him up in different places, and that's what I think, especially on third down. Like you never really know where he's at. Sometimes he could be to the field, sometimes to the boundary, sometimes inside, sometimes outside. Right? Sometimes in a 2-point stance, sometimes in a 3-point stance. Always on third down, we're keeping the offensive coordinator guessing with where he's aligned. You can't always get a beat on him that way. And then first and second down, again, just mastering his technique and his fundamentals over and over and over again. Now you're able to kind of be successful once that whistle blows.
Anything else for Coach Collins? All right, thanks, Coach.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Nothing, and then we call the shot play to Jalen. What was the discussion like in the headset with PJ saying we need to get this thing going?
Stay the course. I mean, I don't necessarily look at it as, we just put ourselves in that position. It was 14-0 before you blinked. And I think we had less than 8 plays in the first quarter. So it was one of those things, and I got great communication in the box. And Eric had said to me, I think it was after that drive, he had said to me, he just reminded me, he gives me reminders each week throughout the course of the game and throughout the course of the week, but he just said, hey, it's probably going to be 8 possessions in this game. Stay aggressive. And so little small things that, whether it's him, Brian Sheehan sits right beside me too, whether it's those two guys or it's someone on the field that gives me just a little bit of a reminder to do that, whether that helped or not, we stayed aggressive. So I think it was cool to see them connect on that throw. We work on those deep shots all the time. I get questioned a lot about being explosive, so it was nice to finally hit on a 78-yard touchdown. We would have loved to get the 3 extra yards to get in the end zone, but it was cool. So I was excited to see that work, and I was happy for Jalen too, because that was one thing throughout the Buffalo game, the Cal game, he's had the drops. And he had 2 in the Buffalo game. He had 2 in the Cal game. And it was really, really cool to see his teammates react to him making that play. The first one down there was Lemecki, when he made the play. So I was really excited to see that, and hopefully it's something we can build on.
Why did you elect to, coming out third quarter, drop back to pass 20 times, which is a modern day record?
Yeah. We've seen it. We've seen it in practice. The team knows what he can do. They know he can throw the football. I think it's very cool to see the development and maturation of the offense. 9.5 minutes to go in the Buffalo game, we asked the O-line to finish the game. We knew we were going to run the ball. We had multiple short yardage situations in that game. We had a 3rd and 5 where AJ picked up the first down on the toss sweep. Those types of things where we asked the O-line to do that. Then in that game, we asked the O-line to protect. We asked the pass catchers to make plays. No one was really told that was going to happen. I said to myself coming out of the Cal game that I wasn't going to put ourselves in a position where Drake Lindsey wasn't going to affect the offense nonstop. And that was one thing that I really made a cognitive effort throughout the course of the week of, okay, if it comes down to this, how am I going to allow Drake Lindsey to affect the game in the most positive fashion? Going up to the press box at halftime, I just felt like we needed to score in between 28 to 35 points. That was the number in my head, and I was going to do everything necessary to put the guys in position to do that. That happened to be that we were going to throw the football, I think, 28 times in the second half, and it worked. And it's another thing that it's awesome when it works. It could have easily went the other way, and it didn't. Drake performed, the offense performed, and I was really happy about it.
How important was it for Drake to have that type of game going into the opponent you're facing this week?
It's week to week. I don't look at it as him having a good game going into Ohio State. It could be any opponent coming up. I want him to have 12. We play on Thursday and a couple Fridays. I want to have those days, whether it's Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, all 12 of those, for him to be at a high level and execute at a high level. I was happy he played well because that's what the team needed. The team needs the quarterback to play well each week. He has no choice. Just like a lot of our other players, they have no choice but to play well and execute at a high level, and that's what we expect. But it really doesn't mean anything to me that it's going into Ohio State. We're just the next opponent on our schedule. We're going to ask our offense and our guys to execute at a high level and play well.
Major checklist things to correct the run game, get things done.
Yeah, I think it's just consistency, trust in your fundamentals, trust in your skills, trust in your eyes, especially when the ball's snapped. Whatever the run scheme calls for, the players got to be able to see it and they got to execute it, and that's what it comes down to. I think going into this week especially, it's a player's game, especially going against this defense. And the guys have to understand what they're going to see pre-snap might not be what they've prepared for going into that game. That's just the level of defense that we're about to go against. And I think it's just trusting in that the ball snap, someone comes into your gap, block him. Okay, something else happens. Let's get to our reaction off of that, and I think they'll respond. And I'm not concerned about that at all. It's just football, and how the guys have to learn from it. They have to learn from their mistakes, and they have to learn from the things they do well.
Arvell Reese jumps out on film while studying him. What have you noticed about him and just Ohio State's defense as a whole?
Well, it's a very good defense. The numbers on them, especially third down, it's like 6+. They've allowed 1 conversion on the year. It's very similar to the defense that we went against last year, Penn State. I think when you look at those two defenses, because I think they were the number 1 third down defense in the country last year at one point, I think when we were playing them, and they were a top 5 total defense last year. So you compare the two, and it's hard to compare them because I look at Ohio State as a defense. You mentioned Arvell, like it's a defense where their back end and their D-line work in conjunction nonstop, but there's no real understanding to why someone's there. Then you go back and look at it, and Coach Patricia, with the NFL, pedigree and experience that he has, it's one of those things where it's a true NFL scheme. It's a true NFL defense where if you sit there and try to figure out, okay, all right, formationally, this is what you're going to see, it's not. It's not. Like, that's the thing. I think that's the most intriguing thing about it, where the quarterback has to know post-snap, you have to have your movement key, and you have to play from there. And I look at Caleb Downs as a guy where he's literally asked to do every job on the defense. It's really remarkable how talented he is and how much they ask him to do. And I don't even know if he's the green dot, but you can see that how much communication he has on the third level. We've seen everything from him play corner, safety, linebacker, take on a guard when they're pulling on counter. Like, it's ridiculous. And I think it's very, very complimentary to their coaches and how they prepare that guy, because they have to prepare him like a quarterback, I would assume. And I really like Styles too, like the Zero. I mean, he's very, very talented. And their front, their D-line, just top to bottom. 97 is powerful, twitchy, strong, and they just ask those guys to do what they need to do. And I'm really looking forward to the challenge, because it's one of those things like when we went against Penn State last year. It's just one of those unique things where you're going against a top-notch defense, and that's what you play for. If you're going into this game and you're anxious or nervous or anything like that, like, I don't think you should be on the field. It's one of those things where, Drake Lindsay, when he's young, this is what you look forward to. Lemecky Brockington, you look forward to this opportunity just like every week, but it's a little bit different because of the defense you're going against and how good they are in the challenge.
Ohio State has only allowed 7 red zone trips.
Yeah.
Does that
No.
make it tougher to prepare
Oh, yeah.
when you don't know what they're going to do?
Yeah, no question. Like their third down defense and how they operate, and then when you get down into the red zone, the green zone, like, it's just it's a lot of bodies in there. Like, it's just how you scheme it, how you end up attacking it. It can be a challenge. And not to mention, then I said it's a player's game. Then when you place the players into that scheme, it's tough. And that's what I think is just the challenge as a coach, is getting them prepared for what they may see or what they may not see, and making it so that the guys can play fast, execute what we've wanted to execute all week. And like I said, it's fun. It's football. You go on the road and you're playing the top defense in the country. I think it's a really unique challenge, and it's something that our players are looking forward to, and frankly, I'm looking forward to it too.
Given your level and how big of an underdog you are, is it the type of game where you need to, like, throw the kitchen sink at them and everything, be aggressive on fourth down, triple down, all that stuff?
I don't necessarily. I mean, I want the guys to have fun, but I also want them to execute at a high level. And if you ask your players to do something out of the ordinary based off the opponent, that's probably not going to go well. And I want our guys to know, okay, here's what we're running. We're going to execute our offense, and we're going to do it to the best of our ability, regardless of who the opponent is. Coach Fleck's expectation when we step on the field each Saturday is we want to execute and play with a 1-0 mentality. That's what we want to do. And I don't look at it as the opponent. Were we a little bit more creative in the Penn State game last year? Maybe. But that we still executed our offense. And like I said, our quarterback has a lot on his plate, and he's going to have a lot on his plate this week.
You mentioned the Penn State game. I think you talked about afterwards. Max had 60-something checks. Is that one of the games where Drake's going to have a similar type of workload?
Drake has a lot on his plate each week, but maybe. I think it's one of those things where he's going to have to be able to get us into the right run based off of what they do, and then not necessarily know what the check is. We know from week 1 when they played Texas to the time that they played Washington last week, it is 4 completely different defenses each week. You put on the tape, it's a different front, it's a different coverage, it's different pressures, third down package is different. We know when we line up for the first third down of the game, they might give some front, they might give some pressure package that we haven't seen. Our guys have to go back to their 100-level rules, play fast, and execute. That's how it's going to be. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's NFL-style defense. So it's you're playing against the best players in the world in the NFL. He's been a part of that. Well, it's pretty unique that the scheme that we're going against is the same scheme that some of the best players in the world have gone against.
How have you gone about
Execution, that's the winter time. I think that's when Drake took him out on his own. You go back all the way to January and February before we started spring ball. Drake would go in there, he'd make his own script. He'd take them out there early in the morning and he'd walk them through things. He'd take them through it because that's all it was. They're not running plays. They're just all working pre-snap stuff. Okay, hey, this is what this motion means. This is what this means based off of what we want as coaches. He's an extension of us. Then you go through spring ball and you just keep doing it. And I always say it's fun. The position coaches always love me during spring ball because I'll just motion to motion. I'll shift to shift. I don't care. And I look at it where I want to see how much they know and how much they can handle. And once they start to crack, and once they start to break, that's when I'll start to pull back. But I'll just keep throwing it on the guys as much as they can. Like, it was not uncommon in spring ball. We'll motion 3 or 4 different guys pre-snap. And we're not doing that now. But it's one of those things where I want to see how lengthy can we get the play call, how lengthy can we get it, all the pre-snap movement down before, okay, we're going to snap the ball with 1 second on the shot clock. It's one of those things where I look at it that way, where you build for that. If you attempt to just throw that on them game week, they're not going to play fast and execute. And right now I love the fact that what we're doing is every movement, as opposed to a couple years ago when this started, every movement tells them something. It might tell them something coverage-wise, front-wise. It might tell them on this particular one, I want to create leverage on a route, create leverage on a block. That's all we're doing. We're either gaining information or using the information, and to the best of our ability to create a technique or put us in the right play. That's what I've loved about how our offense has evolved, and how the quarterback is using it too. So it's going to be critical this week, especially with the movement of how much we can communicate with just the noise and all that stuff. And I'm really excited for the challenge.
One or two more. Everyone's got it? All right, thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.